The Grand Council chamber of the Nexarian Empire stretched across a kilometer of polished obsidian, its vaulted ceiling adorned with holographic representations of 10,000 conquered worlds. Supreme Commander Vexthor stood before the Eternal Council, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light of distant stars. Below him, 12 council members sat in hovering thrones, their bodies enhanced with biotechnology that had evolved beyond organic limitations over millennia of advancement. Another primitive species discovered in Sector 847. Vexthor announced, projecting a hologram of Earth into the chamber's center. They call themselves humans. The projection showed cities, oceans, and a primitive spacecraft that barely reached their own moon. The council members observed with expressions ranging from mild amusement to outright disdain. High Counselor Zara Eth, her form a swirling mass of bioluminescent particles, spoke first. Their technological level. Early space age, Vexthor replied, manipulating the hologram to show Earth's orbital debris and primitive satellites. They've barely managed to leave their atmosphere. Our analysis suggests they're at least 3 centuries from achieving anything resembling proper interstellar travel. The chamber filled with the telepathic equivalent of laughter. The Nexarians had seen thousands of species like this before, young, ambitious, but ultimately insignificant in the grand tapestry of galactic civilization. Their resource profile, asked Council Member Crix, his mechanical eyes scanning the data streams floating around Earth's hologram. Exceptional, Vexthor admitted. The system contains significant deposits of rare elements, and the primary world's biosphere is remarkably diverse. Perfect for harvesting. The council members exchanged knowing looks. They had built their empire on the resources of worlds like this, stripping them bare while relegating their inhabitants to servitude or extinction, depending on their usefulness. What the Nexarians didn't know, what their arrogance prevented them from discovering, was that beneath the surface of human civilization lay secrets that would shake their empire to its foundations. Deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, in a facility that didn't exist on any public record, Director Sarah Chen stood before a wall of holographic displays. At 53, she had spent 3 decades leading humanity's most classified scientific endeavor, Project Prometheus. Status report, she commanded, her voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. Dr. James Rodriguez, head of the detection grid, stepped forward. The Nexarian vessels have entered the Kuiper Belt, exactly as we predicted. Their scan patterns match those we detected during their previous incursions into our space. Chen nodded. For 50 years, humanity had known they weren't alone. The discovery of alien probe fragments in the Arctic in 2084 had changed everything. Instead of announcing their finding to the world, Earth's governments had made an unprecedented decision. To advance in absolute secrecy. Alert the Eden Fleet, Chen ordered. Initiate Protocol Omega. Across the solar system, in bases hidden within asteroids and beneath the surfaces of moons, humanity's real space force stirred to life. Not the primitive rockets and satellites that the Nexarians had detected, but vessels incorporating technologies that had taken half a century of reverse engineering and innovation to develop. Admiral Marcus Wong stood on the bridge of the ESS Hyperion, Earth's most advanced warship. At 3 kilometers in length, it represented the pinnacle of human military technology. Its hull was composed of metamaterials that could bend light and sensor readings around it. Its weapons systems incorporated principles of physics that humanity wasn't supposed to understand for centuries. All hands to battle stations, Wong commanded as indicators showed the Nexarian fleet approaching. But maintain stealth protocols. Let them think they're alone out here. The Hyperion's crew moved with practiced precision. They had trained for this moment for years, knowing that someday humanity's secret preparations would be put to the test. In the Nexarian flagship, Fleet Commander Yithtal reviewed the final survey data with satisfaction. Primitive defenses, minimal space presence, and no indication they've detected us. Begin standard harvesting procedures. The massive harvesting ships moved into position, their energy weapons charging. The Nexarians had performed this operation countless times across the galaxy. They expected no resistance, no surprises. That's when their sensors detected something impossible. "Commander." The sensor officer's voice carried an edge of panic. "Multiple vessels decloaking throughout the system. Energy signatures. They're beyond anything in our database." Ithtal rushed to the control center, his certainty crumbling as he watched hundreds of human warships materialize from seemingly empty space. Their design was unlike anything in Nexarian records, their power readings defying what should have been possible for such a primitive species. On the Hyperion's bridge, Admiral Wong allowed himself a small smile. "Open a channel to the Nexarian flagship," he ordered. "Let's show them how primitive we really are." The message that broadcast across space was clear and deliberate. "This is Admiral Marcus Wong of the Earth Space Service. You have entered restricted space and demonstrated hostile intent. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, we will respond with force. Your empire isn't the first to underestimate humanity. It might, however, be the last." As the Nexarian commander stared at the massive human fleet surrounding his ships, he realized their greatest mistake. They had judged humanity by what they showed the galaxy, not by what they had chosen to hide. The battle that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy was about to begin. Fleet Commander Ithtal's crystalline fingers gripped his command chair as he processed the impossible sight before him. Where moments ago there had been empty space, now hundreds of human warships hung in perfect battle formation. Their dark hulls seemed to drink in the starlight, and their weapon ports glowed with energies that shouldn't have existed on a primitive world. "Impossible," he whispered, more to himself than his crew. Their technology scanned those ships again. The sensor officer's hands trembled as she worked her console. "Sir, their shield signatures are unlike anything in our database. They're using some form of quantum field manipulation that our sensors can barely comprehend. And their weapons." She paused, double-checking her readings. "They appear to be using controlled microscopic singularities as power sources." Across the bridge, the reality of their situation began to sink in. The Nexarian Empire had ruled unchallenged for so long that they had forgotten a fundamental truth: appearances could be deceiving. On the ESS Hyperion, Admiral Wong watched the Nexarian fleet with calculated patience. Around him, his crew maintained absolute professionalism, though the excitement of finally revealing humanity's true capabilities was palpable. "Sir," Lieutenant Sarah Martinez called from her tactical station. "The Nexarian vessels are powering up their weapons. Their shield configurations are shifting to combat status." Wong nodded. He had expected this. The Nexarians' arrogance was legendary, and even now, faced with superior numbers and technology, they would likely choose conflict over submission. "All ships, execute Formation Delta," he commanded. "Activate quantum shields, but do not fire unless fired upon. Let's give them one more chance to make the right decision." The human fleet moved with precision that spoke of years of training, their ships flowing into new positions like a perfectly choreographed dance. The formation was both defensive and offensive, designed to protect Earth while maintaining the ability to strike at a moment's notice. In the Nexarian flagship, Ithtal made his decision. "Launch fighters. Target their lead vessel. Show these upstart humans the might of the Nexarian Empire." Hundreds of crystalline fighter craft poured from the Nexarian ships, their forms beautiful and deadly. Energy weapons charged, preparing to deliver devastating blows to the human vessels. Admiral Wong watched the fighters approach with calm determination. "All ships, execute Protocol Epsilon. Fighters, you are cleared to engage. Show them what humanity has been working on for the past 50 years." From the human fleet emerged swarms of smaller craft, their designs a perfect blend of elegance and lethality. Unlike the rigid crystalline forms of the Nexarian fighters, these vessels moved with impossible agility, powered by miniaturized quantum drives. The space between the fleets erupted in chaos as the fighters engaged. The Nexarians expected an easy victory over primitive human pilots. Instead, they found themselves facing opponents who moved with unprecedented skill and technology. Human fighters phased through space itself, appearing behind Nexarian craft and destroying them before they could react. Quantum-tipped missiles passed straight through Nexarian shields as if they didn't exist. Within minutes, the space around both fleets was littered with the glittering remains of crystalline fighter craft. On the Hyperion's bridge, tactical displays showed the one-sided nature of the engagement. "Sir," Lieutenant Martinez reported, "we've lost 3 fighters. The Nexarians have lost over 200. Wong's expression remained neutral, but inside, he felt a surge of pride. Every pilot out there had trained for years in secret, preparing for this moment. They had studied every scrap of alien technology they could find, developed countermeasures for weapons they hoped they'd never face, and created entirely new forms of combat. The Nexarian commander watched in horror as his fighter screen was systematically demolished. "How?" he demanded, smashing his fist against his command console. "How did they develop this level of technology in secret? Our surveys showed them barely capable of reaching their own moon." His tactical officer, voice shaking, provided the answer. "Sir, we're detecting evidence of extensive stealth technology throughout their system. Bases on their moons, shipyards hidden in asteroid fields. They'd been preparing for this for decades, maybe longer. Everything we saw was a facade." Before Yithtal could respond, new alarms blared across his bridge. The human fleet was moving again, their formation shifting into an attack pattern that would soon envelope his ships completely. Admiral Wong's voice came across all channels again. "Nexarian fleet, this is your final warning. Your fighter screen has been neutralized. Your weapons cannot penetrate our quantum shields. You have 2 options. Surrender and face justice for your attempted invasion, or continue this fight and be destroyed. Choose wisely." In the silence that followed, Yithtal faced the most difficult decision of his career. The Nexarian Empire had never surrendered to anyone, especially not to a species they had considered primitive just hours ago. But as he watched another squadron of his fighters vanish against human quantum weapons, he realized this was no longer about pride. Perhaps, he thought, this is how every empire falls, not to an equal, but to those they underestimated. He looked around his bridge, at the faces of his crew, and made his decision. The next few moments would either mark the first surrender of a Nexarian fleet in history, or the beginning of a war that would reshape the galaxy. The silence stretched across space like a drawn wire, taut with tension. Fleet Commander Yithtal's crystalline hands hovered over his command console, pride warring with survival instinct. In that moment, a new signal cut through the void, a transmission from the Nexarian Empire's Central Command. "Fleet Commander, you are ordered to engage and destroy the human fleet at all costs. The Council has dispatched the first strike fleet. Hold position until reinforcements arrive." Admiral Wong watched the massive energy spike from the Nexarian communication array with growing concern. "Analysis," he asked his communications officer. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across her holographic interface. "They're using a quantum entanglement communicator, sir. Something big is coming. Our deep space sensors are detecting multiple hyperspace ruptures forming at the edge of the solar system." Wong's expression hardened. This was the scenario they had prepared for, but hoped to avoid. "All ships, Battle Formation Omega. Activate the Sol Defense Grid." Throughout the solar system, hidden installations sparked to life. Massive energy collectors that had been disguised as asteroids began charging. Quantum beacons, hidden within the rings of Saturn, aligned themselves. Humanity's greatest defense system, 50 years in the making, prepared for its first real test. The space around Pluto's orbit erupted in brilliant light as the Nexarian First Strike Fleet emerged from hyperspace. 300 warships, each larger than the initial invasion force, arranged themselves in attack formation. Their hulls gleamed with energy weapons powered by stolen technology from a dozen conquered civilizations. Grand Admiral Zextal, Supreme Commander of the First Strike Fleet, stood on his flagship's bridge with the confidence of one who had never known defeat. "So these are the humans who dared resist us," he said, studying the tactical displays. "Impressive technology, but they cannot stand against the full might of the Empire." Inside the Hyperion's war room, Admiral Wong met with his command staff via quantum-linked holograms. Captain Sarah Chen of the ESS Artemis spoke first. "The First Strike Fleet outguns us 3-1, sir. Even with our technological advantage, those aren't good odds." Wong nodded, but a slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Numbers aren't everything, Captain. Humanity hasn't spent the last 50 years just building ships." He turned to his tactical officer. "Initialize Project Prometheus." Throughout the solar system, carefully hidden quantum transmitters activated. They had been placed with mathematical precision, creating a web that encompassed the entire solar system. Each transmitter began generating specific frequencies of quantum interference, carefully calibrated over decades of research. On the Nexarian flagship, alarms suddenly blared. "Grand Admiral," the science officer called out in panic, "our hyperspace generators are being affected by some kind of quantum interference. We can't establish a stable field." Zextal's crystalline face showed the first traces of concern. "Impossible. Nothing can disrupt hyperspace travel at this scale." But the humans had done the impossible. They had studied the fragments of alien technology, reverse-engineered their principles, and found their weaknesses. The quantum interference web didn't just prevent hyperspace travel, it trapped the Nexarian fleet in normal space. Admiral Wong's voice echoed across all channels. "Attention, Nexarian fleet. You are now trapped within our defense grid. Your hyperspace capabilities have been neutralized. Your quantum communications are being blocked. You are alone." The human fleet began to move, but not toward the enemy. Instead, they took up positions around key points in the solar system, activating more hidden installations. On the Nexarian flagship, confusion turned to horror as new energy signatures appeared throughout the solar system. Massive gravitational weapons, hidden in gas giant atmospheres, solar energy collectors disguised as ordinary satellites, a web of quantum-linked defense platforms that could strike any point in the system instantly. "The entire system is a fortress," Zextal whispered, finally understanding. "They've turned their whole solar system into a weapon." The first shots came not from ships but from the defense grid. Precise quantum beams lanced out from hidden platforms, cutting through Nexarian shields as if they were paper. The human fleet coordinated with the automated defenses, herding enemy ships into killing zones where overlapping fields of fire left no room for escape. In the Hyperion's war room, Wong watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. "Send word to Earth. Tell them Protocol Omega is fully engaged. And get me a channel to their Grand Admiral. Let's see if we can end this before it becomes a massacre." The battle for humanity's future hung in the balance, but for the first time in the Nexarian Empire's long history, they faced an enemy who had spent generations preparing specifically to defeat them. The question was no longer whether humanity could resist, but whether the Nexarians could survive their own hubris. Deep in space, the quantum defense grid continued its relentless attack, each shot calculated decades in advance by humanity's most powerful AIs. The Nexarians fought back with desperate courage, but they were fighting an enemy who had turned space itself into a weapon. Their mighty fleet, terror of 1,000 worlds, found itself trapped in a web of humanity's making, facing extinction at the hands of a species they had dismissed as primitive mere hours ago. Grand Admiral Zextal watched his mighty fleet crumble under the relentless assault of humanity's defense grid. Quantum beams sliced through his ship's crystalline hulls, while gravitational weapons twisted space itself into deadly weapons. A third of his fleet was already destroyed or disabled, their wreckage joining the artificial debris field that humanity had created to disguise their true capabilities. "Send the signal," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of Nexarian pride. "Contact the High Council. Tell them, He paused, the words bitter in his throat. Tell them we face not primitives, but equals, perhaps even superiors. On Earth, in the depths of the Himalayan Command Center, Director Sarah Chen received the intercept of the Nexarian transmission. She allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning to her staff. Begin Phase 2. Show them everything. Throughout the solar system, new signatures appeared as humanity's most advanced technologies revealed themselves. Quantum gates, capable of instantaneous transport across vast distances, shimmered into existence. Artificial gravity wells, powerful enough to redirect the paths of entire fleets, activated near strategic points. Admiral Wong's voice carried across all frequencies. Attention, Nexarian forces. You've seen only a fraction of our capabilities. Your empire built itself by overwhelming the unprepared and defenseless. We've spent 50 years preparing specifically for you. In the Hyperion's Tactical Center, Lieutenant Martinez displayed a holographic map showing the positions of both fleets. Sir, the enemy fleet is attempting to regroup near Saturn's orbit. Their formation suggests they're preparing for a final stand. Wong studied the display thoughtfully. They still don't understand. This isn't about destroying them. It's about changing everything. He turned to his communications officer. Open a secure channel to Grand Admiral Zextal. Private frequency. The connection established, and two military leaders, human and Nexarian, faced each other across the void of space. Zextal's crystalline features showed signs of stress, microfractures spreading across his exoskeleton. You've hidden among the stars, Zextal began, watching us, studying us, preparing for this moment. Why reveal yourselves now? Wong's response was measured. Because your empire's expansion had to stop. But more importantly, because the galaxy needs to change. Your people have ruled through fear and technological superiority for too long. What happens when every species you've dominated learns that you can be defeated? The implications hit Zextal like a physical blow. This wasn't just about defending Earth. Humanity was positioning itself to reshape the entire galactic order. Meanwhile, in the Nexarian Council chamber, the holographic representations of the battle caused chaos among the ruling elite. Council member Crix's mechanical eyes whirred as they processed the tactical data. Impossible. Their technological advancement should have taken centuries. High Councilor Zarath's bioluminescent form pulsed with agitation. They hid their true nature from us. While we watched their primitive rockets and satellites, they were building this. She gestured at the displays showing humanity's quantum defense grid. The question is no longer how to defeat them, but how to survive them. Back in the solar system, the battle entered its final phase. The remaining Nexarian ships, realizing the futility of their position, began powering down their weapons. One by one, the mighty vessels of the First Strike Fleet surrendered to a force they had dismissed as primitive mere hours ago. Admiral Wong stood on the Hyperion's bridge, watching the surrender unfold. Send word to all Earth forces, accept their surrender, but maintain battle readiness, and prepare a quantum communication to the Nexarian Council. Tell them we're ready to negotiate, but not as subjects or equals, as the power that broke their fleet. In the debris field that had once been the front line of battle, human rescue ships began their work, their advanced medical technology saving Nexarian survivors who would have been left to die by their own empire's forces. It was a calculated display of both humanity's technological prowess and their fundamental difference from the empire they had just defeated. Director Chen, monitoring the situation from Earth, began composing humanity's terms. They would not seek revenge or domination. That would make them no better than the Nexarians. Instead, they would reshape the galaxy's power structure, ensuring that no species would face the threat of extinction or enslavement again. As the last Nexarian ship surrendered, Admiral Wong received a priority message from Earth's unified government. The words that appeared on his screen would set the course for humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. Operation Prometheus complete. Begin Phase 3, Galactic Reformation. 1 month after the Battle of Seoul, The great hall of the Galactic Concordat hummed with tension. Representatives from 100 species gathered in the massive chamber aboard humanity's newest space station, positioned at the neutral ground of Alpha Centauri. The crystalline forms of Nexarian diplomats sat alongside the varied shapes of their former subject races, all facing the simple podium where Admiral Wong would address the gathering. The Admiral stood, his dress uniform gleaming under the artificial starlight. Behind him, a window showed the vast expanse of space, where both human and alien ships maintained a careful peace. For centuries, he began, the galaxy lived under the shadow of empire. Today, we forge a different path. His voice carried across the chamber, translated instantly into hundreds of languages by quantum processors. Humanity revealed itself not to conquer, but to liberate. Not to dominate, but to protect. In the audience, former slave species watched with hope, while Nexarian representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The defeat of their first strike fleet had shattered their image of invincibility, and the subsequent revelations had changed everything. Director Chen, seated near the podium, activated a holographic display showing the new galactic map. Borders had been redrawn. Former Nexarian territories returned to their original inhabitants. But more importantly, humanity's quantum defense technology was being shared with all species who signed the Concordat. Never again will one species dominate all others through technological superiority, Wong continued. The quantum defense grid that protected Earth will now protect all worlds who join our alliance. Every species will have the power to defend itself, to determine its own destiny. From her position among the Nexarian delegation, Supreme Counselor Zara-Eth watched with a mixture of bitterness and dawning understanding. Her people had ruled through fear and might for so long they had forgotten there could be another way. The humans had defeated them not just militarily, but philosophically. But this is not about revenge. Wong's voice softened. The Nexarian people will have a place in our new order, not as conquerors, but as equals. Their knowledge, their experience, their technology, all will be valuable in building a better galaxy. We offer not subjugation, but redemption. In orbit above the station, the ES Hyperion maintained its vigil. Lieutenant Martinez, now promoted to commander, monitored the defensive screens. The ship's quantum sensors could detect the smallest anomaly across light years of space, ensuring no threat could approach the historic gathering undetected. Back in the hall, Wong activated another holographic display, this one showing the new technologies humanity was preparing to share. Clean energy systems that could power entire planets, medical advances that could extend lifespans across all species, and transportation networks that would unite the galaxy in ways the Nexarian Empire never could. Some have asked why we hid for so long, why we built our strength in secret. Wong addressed the unspoken question that had lingered since humanity's revelation. We knew that emerging too soon would only lead to more conflict, more destruction. We waited until we could offer not just resistance to empire, but an alternative to it. In the audience, representatives from formerly oppressed species began to understand. Humanity had not just defeated the Nexarians, they had systematically prepared to reshape the entire galactic order. Every technology they had developed, every strategy they had planned, was designed not just for victory in battle, but for peace afterward. Director Chen rose to join Wong at the podium. The Galactic Concordat is more than a peace treaty, she explained. It is a framework for cooperation, for mutual defense, for shared prosperity. Every world that joins will have access to the quantum defense grid. Every species will have a voice in our shared future. As she spoke, the first signatures appeared on the quantum-linked treaty documents. Former enemies became allies. Old grievances gave way to new possibilities. The galaxy was changing, not through conquest, but through choice. In the depths of space, automated constructors began building the first components of the Galactic Quantum Defense Network. The technology that had protected Earth would soon protect hundreds of worlds, ensuring that no species would ever again face extinction at the hands of a superior force. Admiral Wong concluded the historic session with words that would be remembered for generations. Today marks not the end of empire, but the beginning of something greater. We emerge from hiding not to rule the stars, but to ensure that they belong to everyone. The age of conquest is over. The age of cooperation begins. As the delegates filed out of the Great Hall, many paused to look through the vast windows at the star-filled expanse beyond. For the first time in living memory, those stars represented not threats to be feared or resources to be conquered, but possibilities to be explored together. The human fleet began to disperse, heading out to help establish defense grids around formerly oppressed worlds. The Hyperion's quantum drive hummed to life, preparing to lead the first joint human-alien expedition into unexplored space. In the ship's command center, Admiral Wong allowed himself a small smile. They had changed the galaxy not through superior firepower, but through superior vision.